Hey peeps, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about Ignis, the Furnace Master, and how to pass on this fight. The fight is pretty simple. There's some mechanics that are super annoying for casters, especially for us because we're turrets basically, like we cannot cast while moving. But let's talk about the mechanics and maybe see how we can use them to benefit us. First up, the most obvious part is the ads that spawn. They're technically ignored on every single fight nowadays because they don't really do anything and they're tanked far away from the boss. But if your tank actually tanks them somewhat close to the boss and your chain lightning can reach them, it's a huge benefit for you. Outside of haste cooldowns, chain lightning especially will do more damage than lightning bolt per cast. So lightning bolt has a 33% chance to overload on one target and chain lightning has an 11% chance to overload per target up to 3. Since chain lightning does more damage, if you have the boss and at least 2 other ads that you can hit, you have the huge chance to overload, you do more damage per cast, and the overload will obviously do more damage than a lightning bolt overload, which is insanely good for us. So make sure, if you can basically chain lightning all of them together, to do it. One thing I want to tell you though is, damage on the ads doesn't matter for your pass. It will look good on details, but the damage on the ads doesn't matter from the pass, it gets deleted unless the ads die. But since you don't focus them anymore after a few weeks now, since they can't just be face tanked and you just kill the boss, it basically doesn't really matter. So the ads are just there for you to cleave. Next up we have his AoE knock up with the silence. So whenever he knocks you up and you're casting, you get interrupted and you have, I think, a 6-second silence or something on you, or you get locked out of your school of magic that you used. Most important is obviously don't get silenced. When you're knocked up, you cannot hardcast. It's pretty simple. What can you do when you're flying in the air? So, if your flame shock is about to fall off in 1 or 2 seconds and your knockup just started, when you come down, your flame shock will most likely be off the target, making your lava burst basically useless. So you need to flame shock and then cast lava burst. So what do you want to do? Obviously, when you're knocked up, you use flame shock to reapply your flame shock on the target. If the flame shock is still on the target for an additional, like say, 5 or 6 seconds, flame shock reapplying won't be as useful. So what else do? You can reapply your water shield if it fell off, you can use thunderstorm, and if you can, which most of the guilds actually do, you can basically just stand in front of the boss really closely. And if you get knocked up, your thunderstorm gives you mana, but also does damage to the boss. What do you do if water shield is up and thunderstorm is on cooldown, or you don't need the mana? You can just use frost shock. It's not a very good spell, you don't use it in your rotation unless in these circumstances. What you can also do is use Elemental Mastery, Lightning Bolt, but usually with Bloodlust, at least for me, I get Bloodlusted. I use my Troll Racial, and when my Troll Racial is gone, I use LA Mastery, or the other way around. So most of the time, I don't even have it anymore. The last thing the boss does is he eats you, and when you're in his stomach, you take a lot of damage, but you also get a damage buff, aka a lot of haste. And you can DPS when you're in the stomach, which means if you get healed and you don't die, being eaten isn't a DPS loss. You can actually pass really well if you get eaten once or twice, and you use that to spam a lot of lightning bolts and lava bursts and whatnot. Importantly, what I would say is, before you get spit out, reapply your flame shock, so it is the hasted one. One important thing that is very simple is make sure that you have all your food. Make sure you have flame tongue buff. You have your flask. If it's like a holiday type of thing and there's like another food that you can use that stacks, or now where it's Valentine's Day and you can use these perfumes that give you extra buff, you can use them too. Make sure you have the right gear on and the right trinkets. On fights like, let's say, Ignis, basically, the fights usually last about 3 minutes. Your fire alley is 2 minutes. So having 2 proc trinkets can be very good for your fire alley. Obviously, if your fire alley is down after 2 minutes, your damage falls off quite hard. And depending on how long the fight is, it might be better to use the Illustration of Dragon Soul thingy that gives you 200 spell power constantly. It will give you a worse snapshot, but it's going to be better in the long run dependent on your fight length. So how do you snapshot your fire alley? First up, you put all your totems down. Very importantly, you also put down your Totem of Wrath. Yes, it doesn't stack with the Demo Pact, but it empowers the first Demo Pact, also giving you and everyone else more spell power. So Totem of Wrath into pre-pot. you can fish for trinket procs with pretty simply just spamming Healing Stream Totem. Whenever you fish for procs, you wait a little bit when the fight starts for the Demo Warlock to put up the pact, and then you use Fire Alley. It's that simple. There's a Fire Alley Snapshot Weak aura in the description that you can use to see how much spell power you have at the moment and how big your Fire Alley will be. Also, do not panic when your trinkets don't proc together. It is better to use your Fire Alley with only one trinket procced than waiting for the second trinket to proc, losing your pre-pot, and maybe the first trinket also runs out. So some of the times you're just getting unlucky and then you just have to live with only having one trinket procced. Most of the time, if you try to fish for them, you can be lucky and actually have both procced with pre-pot and then Demo Lock having is packed up, and then you get the huge snapshot. Also, an important update that I want to say is that flame caps from TBC that used to be like super hype for basically every class of fire damage, it doesn't benefit us anymore. Yes, it still gives us more fire damage, but now they take the same cooldown with the pots instead of the health stones. So technically, you could pre-pop a flame cap and then use a pot in the middle of the fight, but using a pre-pot instead of the flame cap is more DPS. So flame caps are super useless now and they don't do anything. You can pop them on the trash if you still have them around, because selling them now will do nothing. No one will buy them anymore. Something else that can help a little bit with DPS is if you have a friend that is a paladin that can buff kings or might to your Fire Alley. Also, if you want to pass on specific fights, asking a mage or a disc priest for either focus magic or PI will help you a lot. Also, I have a Discord server, link in the description, where you can find an elemental guide, other elemental players that can help you out if you have any questions.